Welcome everybody to our graduate admissions info session for the MA Climate and Society program. I'm so glad to see you joining us today. We're going to be getting started in a minute or two. We're just going to allow some additional participants to stream into the Zoom session. You're in for a treat. Today is going to be all about MA Climate and Society. And in fact, the program director, Dr. Lisa Dale, will be joining us. She is joining us today. And we'll be doing a Q&A towards the second half of the session. So this is really your opportunity to also pepper her with questions about the program, the curriculum. She is instrumental in our climate core. She's in fact, the faculty member for climate change adaptation, which is the course all Columbia Climate School students, explore. So you're in for a treat today. Again, I want to emphasize that. I always do the same thing for the start of my sessions. It's a shameless audio plug. And I just like to make sure that you guys can hear me well. So in the Q&A box, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and type in where you are joining us from, the city, state, country. We love to see the kind of the diverse geographic nature of the prospective student audience here at Columbia Climate School. So if you could go ahead and start sharing with us your geographic location, we really love to see that. Oh, Philippe, I'm so glad you're here from Bogota. I know you emailed Dr. Dale initially, and she put me in touch with you. Excellent. Ella from DC. Marina, again from Madrid. Welcome, Marina. So glad to see you. Basking Ridge, New Jersey. Tanisha, welcome. I just moved to New Jersey. I'm very excited about it. London, England. Welcome. Anushka, this is wonderful. Billings, Montana. Excellent. Excellent, excellent. Mumbai, India. Welcome, welcome. Nepal, welcome. Excellent. Again, keep them coming. Just to, if you haven't shared your location yet, we really love to see it. Hudson River Watershed, Sleepy Hollow. Excellent, Christopher. Well, welcome. We love to see that. Cambridge, Massachusetts. Excellent. Welcome so much. So we're going to go ahead and get started. During today, I'm going to give you a broad overview about Columbia Climate School and kind of our current student learning community, getting a sense of who studies at the climate school. We're then going to briefly note our kind of menu option of degree programs and then get razor focused in on the MA Climate and Society program. And we will wrap things up with professional development, financial aid, and of course, my favorite topic, the application process at Columbia Climate School. And then the second half of the session will really be reserved for Dr. Lisa Dale. But before I go into my full spiel, I would like to formally introduce Dr. Dale to you. So Dr. Lisa Dale is director of the MA Climate and Society program here at Columbia Climate School, where her courses include sustainable development in Rwanda and, as I mentioned earlier, the climate core course in climate change adaptation. In fact, this is a course that will be taken across the programs at Columbia Climate School. Dr. Dale is trained as a political scientist. Her research on environmental policy focuses on climate change adaptation in two distinct settings: rural agricultural communities in Sub-Saharan Africa and wildfire risk zones across the American West. She has a background in both academia and politics, including 5 years as a policy advisor with the Department of Natural Resources for the state of Colorado. So I just want to say a sincere welcome and thank you so much, Dr. Dale, for joining us today. Again, what we're going to be doing is towards the end of the session, reserving that specific Q&A time for Dr. Dale. So I'm first going to do a complete program overview. And as questions come to you, feel free to type them in the Q&A. Like I said, we're going to be reserving that second half for the Q&A slot. So now what I'd like to do is kind of anchor everybody on Columbia Climate School and Columbia University itself. So when we say Columbia University, we're referring to the oldest university in the state of New York, the fifth oldest here in the United States, and considered a blueprint by many for major research institutions. So when you say the term Columbia University, many different schools, the majority of those schools fall underneath that umbrella. You can think of Columbia Business School, Columbia School of Journalism, which administers the Pulitzer Prize each year, Columbia School of Social Work, the oldest school of social work in the United States. We have Columbia Law School. Again, the list goes on. And then Columbia Climate School is the newest school within Columbia University. It was announced in 2020 and formally launched in 2021. And our ethos is that the world requires knowledgeable leaders to work with businesses, communities, governments, and civil society to address the climate crisis. Columbia Climate School's graduate degree programs and other learning opportunities provide an interdisciplinary knowledge base for climate leaders with diverse interests and backgrounds. And I want to lean into that as you're learning about the Columbia Climate School, as you're hearing our sessions. Interdisciplinary truly is the word to grasp onto. We have members of the faculty like Dr. Dale, who are trained political scientists, deep knowledge in climate policy. Then we have individuals joining on the faculty that are steeped in environmental sciences and in atmospheric science. We have faculty that are trained lawyers, steeped in environmental justice. So it's a very much an interdisciplinary school, and our learning community is interdisciplinary, and it has to be when it comes to addressing climate change. Something else I want to highlight, you'll see on this slide in particular, 3 different photos, because sometimes it's fun to share the footprint of Columbia Climate School. As a new school, we are dynamic from a footprint perspective because we are truly located at 3 distinct locations at Columbia University. So the first one I'm going to highlight for you is in the lower right-hand corner, Columbia Climate School, and specifically Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. That photograph in the lower right corner is the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. It's a 189-acre research campus located in Rockland County. It's about 45 minutes north of our main Manhattan campus. And on Lamont, there's over 300 PhD researchers. Many of our research centers are based there. The Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences and E3B perform a lot of research at Lamont. And they have been doing incredible work in the climate space for decades. It's celebrating its 75th year anniversary. And just to give you an example of some incredible work, one of our Lamont research professors, interestingly, is the first person to have coined the term global warming in a research paper, an academic research paper in the 1970s. So we have a long-standing history in the climate space at Columbia University, and Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory now falls within the Columbia Climate School family, so to speak. In the lower left corner, you'll see our campus, which is the main campus, Morningside Heights. Many of your core courses are based there, along with your elective courses. And then finally, the middle photograph is the Forum Building, which is located in Manhattanville. And many of my colleagues in the Academic Affairs Department specifically have offices there, and quite a few of the faculty have offices there, although Dr. Dale's office is interestingly in the Morningside Heights neighborhood. But again, I would say is our footprint. We have 3 distinct kind of footprints here at Columbia Climate School. In terms of our student profiles, it's a very diverse audience. So in terms of the MA Climate and Society, which is the program that all of you are here to learn more about today, we welcomed 121 students this fall 2024, 44% of those students being international, representing 27 different countries of citizenship. And among our domestic students, 18 different states of representation. Another data point that we're extremely proud of is the fact that 15% of the students in our learning community are the first in their family to attend college. In the United States, we classify those as first-generation college students. And finally, the average age in our cohort is 26 years old. In terms of the kind of academic learning background, we always like to highlight this as well. Within the MA Climate and Society program, I would not say there's one cookie cutter student. They all come from extremely diverse academic backgrounds, majors, disciplines, even professional roles for those of the more seasoned students that join our learning community. But to give you a sense of kind of their academic backgrounds, about 2/3 of the students have social science degrees. So think of it as economics, political science, urban planning, anthropology, sociology. And then about 1/3 of the students come to us with more traditional STEM backgrounds. Maybe they were an environmental engineer, or material engineer, environmental science, physics, for example. Interestingly, what I also like to note is we've seen an evolution in our program. So as Columbia Climate School has become more popular and more well-known, the social science segment of our audience has increased. And I think we largely attribute that to the growing interest in the climate space. Now, just to briefly provide you an overview of what we currently offer at Columbia Climate School, we do have two distinct graduate degree programs. Today, our focus will be on the MA in Climate and Society, but I want to just share with you the two distinct programs. So first, the MA Climate and Society program. This program has actually existed for over 15 years, interestingly. It used to be embedded within the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences and migrated to Columbia Climate School in 2021. This is a one-year, 35 credit hour program. It's completed typically in 3 semesters for our full-time students, although we do have a part-time learning community that would complete the degree in 2 years. I'll talk about the part-time option and what that looks like shortly. In terms of the practical experience within the MA Climate and Society, you will exclusively complete a capstone in your final summer semester, and the program is STEM designated for those of you that are international students that might be interested in potentially having a longer OPT period. Then our newest program, the newest addition to our portfolio, is the MS in Climate degree. This is a 50 credit hour program completed in 4 semesters or 21 months. This program's enrollment model is exclusively full-time. The practical experience will be both an internship as well as a capstone, and this program is also STEM designated. Any of you that are joining the session today that might also be interested in the MS in Climate program, we will have another dedicated info session in early January. And in fact, my colleague Damaris Diaz in the chat box will be copying and pasting the info session webpage, so you can register for the early January info session if you want to hear more details about the MS in Climate. And we also have many different YouTube recordings on the MS in Climate, so you can go to the Columbia Climate School YouTube channel to view those recordings as well. But today's focus is going to be on the MA in Climate and Society program. This is an interdisciplinary graduate degree program that trains professionals and academics to understand and address the impacts of climate variability and change on society and the environment. Through classes and research, students gain knowledge in the physical and social sciences and the humanities as they relate to climate. Again, the word really to lean into here is the interdisciplinary nature of the MA in Climate and Society. To give you a very brief snapshot of what that 3-semester timeline looks like, the fall semester will largely be made up of climate core courses, along with an applied climate 1 course that all climate students will be taking. This applied climate course is going to be just that, extremely applied in nature with different case studies. And then in the spring semester, you're continuing your climate core. You'll also be pursuing Columbia Climate School electives and also potentially cross-registration journey courses, wrapping up Applied Climate 2. And then your final summer semester will be wrapping up your elective courses and then completing a capstone workshop, which is a 3 credit hour course. I'll be talking about the capstone workshop shortly as well. Now I want to spend a little bit more time on the climate core, and you might hear a little bit more color from this angle from Dr. Dale as well when we talk about it, but the spinal cord of Columbia Climate School, and I think the blueprint of a Columbia Climate School experience, is the climate core. It's the idea that we are attracting this incredibly diverse audience. Maybe you in the audience might be interested in sustainability consulting or climate consulting in the private sector. Perhaps you're interested in carbon management. Maybe you're interested in sustainable development. Maybe you're here because you're interested in climate communication. But the through line for all of you is going to be this climate core, meaning regardless of the industry or sector that you are planning to pursue, you are all anchored in this climate core curriculum. And this coming year, the climate core is evolving, and we're extremely excited about it because lots of it is based on both faculty and student feedback and kind of the evolution of industry. So one of the climate core courses that has been taught for many years as an elective and now will be an official climate course, Climate Justice, Theory, Practice, and Policy, taught by Professor Sheila Foster. As we know, different communities are more greatly impacted by climate change versus others, oftentimes underserved communities. So making sure that if you are going into the climate space, having a firm understanding and lens in climate justice is critical. We also are going to be offering the history of the climate crisis as one of our climate core courses. And then the 2 criticals in addressing climate change, both climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation are a part of the core. As I mentioned earlier, Dr. Lisa Dale is the primary faculty member teaching climate change adaptation. And then we have dynamics of climate variability and change. You can think of this as largely a physics class that teaches you kind of the science behind climate change. What I always like to say is when somebody stops you on the street and says, "Do you believe in climate change?" and your response is, "I do believe in it." And then their next question is, "Why do you believe in it?" You can give them the science behind the why, and you will be able to communicate that science behind the why to different audiences. Maybe it's a business leader. Maybe it's a policy analyst. Maybe it's in the K-12 education space. But this dynamics course is going to anchor you in again, the physics behind climate change. And then finally, you have quantitative models for climate application. This is going to be a course using the computer program language R to really dig deep into climate data. Being able to understand climate data is critical. Manipulating the data, telling a story with the data, and most importantly, making decisions based on the data. So even if you see yourself as not being an individual that's necessarily going to be a computer scientist in the climate change space, you really do have to understand climate data. Even if you're managing the team of climate data individuals, you have to be able to understand and be anchored in what they're in what the basics are behind it. So one thing I want to emphasize about the Climate Core is you are all here joining this session because you're interested in being challenged. You're interested in a Columbia University experience, and that comes with a challenging experience at that. That Climate Core is going to give you that challenge. You, as a prospective MA in Climate and Society student, should truly have a hunger for the core. Again, I'm emphasizing this is a blueprint to a Columbia Climate School experience. So it's not just a potpourri of these climate core courses, but all of them are of critical importance, regardless of the industry or sector that you're planning to pursue. And again, these are going to be challenging courses, but that is why you are here thinking about Columbia University and Columbia Climate School in particular. You're here to be challenged, you're here to learn. And again, I'm sure Dr. Dale is going to share a little bit more, especially about climate change adaptation. I lightly referenced the fact that we have a part-time learning community within the MA Climate and Society program. I want to give you a little bit of kind of understanding in terms of the size of that part-time learning community. So last year's cohort, we had 4 students among 103 that were part-time. This year's cohort of 121, we had 7 students that joined part-time. So it's definitely a smaller subset of students. The one thing I like to emphasize is that the program goes from being a 1-year program to specifically a 2-year program when you're enrolled in the MA Climate and Society student as a part-time learning model. But what's really important to stress here is that this is not an evening program. This is not an online delivery. While we might have some evening courses for electives, we might have some online courses for electives, for example. This program is very much anchored in an in-residence daytime component for most of your core courses. So if you do decide to go part-time, this would definitely be a conversation with your employer to make sure that they understand the demands of the course schedule. Students enrolling in the part-time program generally include one or more of the following profiles. So it's people with demonstrated significant work experience in a climate or climate adjacent space, working professionals currently in any space that can reasonably assert that they can readily apply the MA Climate and Society program to their current work, or to easily transition to climate or a related field where they can apply the program to that profession. So again, typically a part-time profile is not, I just graduated from Syracuse University and I want to go part-time to save money right out of school. That wouldn't be a compelling part-time applicant. It's an individual that, let's say, I'm right now working for the New York Times. I'm a business journalist, and now I'm covering a lot more stories relating to business and climate change. I'd like to go ahead and take the MA Climate and Society program to get that climate lens in my reporting. That would be a far more kind of compelling part-time applicant. Again, in the admissions application, we do ask MA Climate and Society students if they are planning on pursuing part-time enrollment. If that's the case, you would indicate yes, and you'd have to give a short answer as to why you are pursuing part-time enrollment. I also want to touch on the capstones, and my colleague Damaris Diaz will also copy and paste a great website with our our summer 2024 capstone workshop videos in the chat box, so you can see kind of a more complete and robust listing of organizations. But this is a final semester, kind of applied opportunity. I like to say it's the ultimate transforming concepts into practice, taking everything that you learned in your climate core and your elective journey and applying it to a real world kind of consulting experience with an organization that's coming to Columbia Climate School for a specific issue that they want to be explored. So students can complete the 3-credit summer capstone workshop typically in a group setting. It's typically between 3 and 6 students. And I will say that it's in the spring semester that we share the different consulting capstone opportunities, and you will list your top 3 choices. We can't give you your top choice, unfortunately. We can't always guarantee that, but usually students do get their top choice, or at least one of their top 2 choices. We've worked with a variety of organizations. Again, Damaris has pasted in that link. Feel free to review that closely. But we worked with the United Nations Foundation of Climate Environment Program, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. My personal favorite, I say this every time, but 2 years ago, the Climate School partnered with WFLA TV, which is the NBC affiliate in the Tampa Bay area, and I'm from the Tampa Bay area, along with Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. And that news station was specifically asking for a study to assess the Tampa Bay area's vulnerability compared to other cities along the West Florida coast, and glean any explanation to the city's vulnerability under current climate change conditions. That was done 2 years ago, and what's really incredible is that the hurricane season has only become even more dramatic since that capstone workshop. So we do have some really interesting projects that students work on each summer. We worked with the Metropolitan Transit Authority, I believe the Environmental Defense Fund last summer. You can definitely check out the listing of organizations and, again, see the students' videos and their slides. I also want to touch on climate school electives, and in terms of Dr. Dale knows this intimately because she serves on our one of our curriculum committees that approves climate school electives. But the list has only been growing, and it's been really exciting and dynamic to be working at Columbia Climate School. I mentioned I joined in March of 2022, so I'm a relatively new member of Columbia University's Climate School. When I joined that academic year, they offered 3 specific electives for Columbia Climate School students. Now there's definitely over 20 different electives, and these are just a few examples. For example, politics of climate in Asia, food systems and climate interactions, toward climate resilience and justice, Black ecologies, climate and energy justice practicum, climate change law and policy. The list truly goes on. And again, our electives are extremely dynamic and cover a variety of topics within climate change. But one thing I think that specifically our faculty have been doing an incredible job of, and especially Dr. Dale, because she serves on this particular committee, but our faculty are very sensitive and very strategic when it comes to offering climate electives and making sure that the climate electives complement each other for our learning community. So to give you an example of, I think, a really beautiful job they did, we had 2 climate finance electives that were conducted this semester. One is climate financing, financing renewable energy. This course, I would say, would be that private sector lens of climate finance. It examines the key ingredients necessary to finance a renewable energy project, to make it economic, including exploring different forms of capital available to successfully finance a project, along with analyzing revenue models for renewable investors that require returns to justify that investment. Think about, like, for example, a large solar panel project in the state of Pennsylvania, and you're, again, examining those key ingredients to making that project feasible and making sure it's economic. That's a really private sector lens. And then we offer climate policy and investment by Dr. Lisa Sachs, who taught this course. This is really what we have to recognize, that, climate finance, a growing, exciting field, and the private sector is certainly doing great work in it, but the private sector can only be and move and become compelling if the policy side truly starts and dictates that conversation. So This course explores the many interrelated challenges to investing in energy transition to see why the big picture is important for really understanding policies or practices at the granular level. Again, these two courses were rolled out this semester to complement one another. And in fact, one of my admissions interns is taking both courses and has told me he really appreciates hearing from both professors in this semester. So again, we're very thoughtful about the way we roll out electives. And then what I always like to stress is that, the MA Climate and Society program in Columbia Climate School itself, we keep leaning into the word interdisciplinary. And how can we not offer an opportunity for students to cross-register at some of the most dynamic and esteemed professional schools in those disciplines here in the United States? Schools like Columbia Law School, the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation, Columbia School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, the Mailman School of Public Health, the School of International and Public Affairs. So students in the MA Climate and Society are afforded the opportunity to cross-register for any graduate level courses, so long as they are able to cross-register. There might be prerequisites requirements, and certainly some professional schools have some specific restrictions on cross-registration, but many students at the MA Climate and Society program take advantage of the cross-registration opportunities. And how can you not, as a student of climate, as a student in an interdisciplinary degree? So cross-registration is also available. I'll now briefly touch on career resources and professional development opportunities. At Columbia Climate School, you have a dedicated career management office. We have a phenomenal team. Our director of career management is extremely seasoned and well-versed on counseling our graduate student learning community. In fact, she comes to us from the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences here at Columbia University. And she has a phenomenal colleague working alongside her. And also within that office is phenomenal alumni resources. And so their team works closely with other members who work closely with alumni. And that area includes employer info sessions, resume and cover letter reviews, alumni mentorship program, again, is a phenomenal opportunity. You might be thinking, well, Columbia Climate School is a new school. How are you offering an alumni mentorship program? Well, I've likely referenced that the MA Climate and Society program has existed for over 15 years. So we have hundreds of Climate and Society alumni from that standpoint, but we also have a partner program, kind of consortium of alumni through sustainable management and the MPA in environmental science and policy, among other programs that participate in the alumni mentorship program that's hosted every spring. We also have phenomenal sustainability skills seminars, anywhere from lead certification to sustainable consulting. We host these sustainability skills seminars every month. Every February, we have the All Ivy Environmental Sustainable Development Career Fair. In fact, if any of you joined our most recent Columbia Climate School info session, one of our alumni, Taylor Atkinson, joined, and she actually secured her full-time position from that career fair. That video is uploaded on YouTube if you wanted to check it out. The office also hosts mock interviews. They also have an exclusive job board. So the list really does go on in terms of career resources and professional development opportunities. And then this pie chart is just to give you a quick snapshot of where our class of 2022 and class of 2023 have secured positions in industry. And so you can see that it really is very broad and diverse. 31% went into the private sector, 21% in the public sector. Quite a few students went into the nonprofit and NGO space. And my colleague Damaris Diaz will go ahead and copy and paste the employer section of the MA Climate and Society website that gives you this dynamic pie chart, and you can kind of click on the different industries and see the specific organizations that have hired our students and their specific job titles. And then this is just an additional list of where our students go on to. It's just to show you the diverse nature from the city of Los Angeles to the city of Seattle, from more of that local government standpoint, to the World Bank, UNICEF, Boston Consulting Group, Apple. The list really goes on, and it's a very kind of diverse list of where our alumni go on to work. And now I'll talk about financial aid opportunities. So number one is we have climate school scholarships. And we also have external fellowships that we strongly encourage you to explore. Again, sorry, I keep shouting out Damaris on this, but in terms of our financial aid, we have a tuition and financial aid webpage that we strongly encourage you to explore. There is an external fellowships section dedicated there that, if you are interested in external fellowships, outside funding, let's say, now is the time to start researching that. And then in terms of climate school scholarships, you are automatically going to be considered for climate school scholarships upon submitting your admissions application. And if you are interested in those climate school scholarships, we highly, highly recommend that you apply by the January 15th priority deadline. That's something that I can't emphasize enough. I do want to also acknowledge many of our students utilize federal and private loans to help fund their graduate school education here at Columbia Climate School. And the Columbia University Student Financial Service Office is who assists our students moving forward next fall 2024 in the packaging of those. For any of you joining us today that is an international student, I also will note that several students that are international have utilized private loans from two different organizations. One is Empower and another is Prodigy Finance. These organizations are able to loan to international students without requiring a U.S. cosigner. So now I'm going to go ahead and briefly touch on our online application before we get to, I think, the most exciting part, which is speaking to Dr. Dale and hearing a little bit more of her perspective on the program and offering you guys the opportunity to ask questions for Dr. Dale. So first and foremost, the online application, though, will require you to upload your resume. You will also upload 2 letters of reference. One of those letters must be an academic letter of recommendation if you've been enrolled in a university within the last 5 years. That's only if you've been enrolled in a university within the last 5 years. If it's been more than 5 years since you've been enrolled in a university, then you're more than welcome to provide 2 professional recommendation letters. In addition, you will upload your unofficial college transcripts for committee review. We do not require the official college transcripts for admissions committee review. We only require them if you are admitted and then choose to enroll in our university. And then for any students that are international and where English is not your first language and was not the language of instruction in your university, we would require either the TOEFL, the IELTS, or alternatively the Duolingo English test. We do have minimum standards on our English language tests for international students that have that specific profile because our program is exclusively taught in English, and you have to have a strong command of the English language in order to succeed at Columbia University. So our minimum TOEFL is a 100, the minimum IELTS is a 7.5, and the minimum Duolingo English test is a 135. Finally, your statement of purpose, which I think is a critical element of your application, and especially for the admissions committee to understand your goals and ambitions for this program and really understand your what you bring to the learning community. The deadlines I want to reference are January 15th. Again, decisions would be released in March, and it's recommended if you are interested in climate school scholarships, and the final deadline is going to be March 1st, 2025. I'm not going to go into too much more on the online application process. We do have a dedicated application tips and strategies recording that's both embedded on the application process website. In fact, it got embedded last night, I'm happy to say, but Damaris can also share that link as well with you in the chat box. Feel free to review that. We have 4 current students that really go into how they approach the application process, who they ask for recommendation letters, so definitely take a look at that. And then in terms of applying, just briefly noting the statement of purpose, this is up to 1,000 words. And in that statement of purpose, you want to share the key experiences that have kind of led to your decision to apply to this program. What are your professional and academic goals? Why is Columbia Climate School and the Climate and Society program particularly critical for enrollment for you? And then finally, which climate core course are you most excited about? I want to go back. Forgive me, I just want to emphasize it again. The climate core is critical. It's again the spinal cord to our program. It is a signature of a Columbia Climate School experience, and it's what sets us apart from many other perhaps environmental schools that you're looking into. So really reflecting on the climate core is important. And then sometimes you know some of the strongest statements of purpose draw upon a climate core course, and maybe you weave in your own story based on that core course. Maybe that climate justice course really resonates with you for a personal reason, or perhaps you're from a region of the world where climate adaptation, you're seeing it or you're not seeing enough of it. So again, reflecting on a climate core course you're most excited about should not be ignored. I'm giving you that as a big hint. But without further ado, I do want to dedicate now an appropriate amount of time to Dr. Dale and really kind of hearing her perspective and giving you an opportunity to ask thoughtful questions of Dr. Dale as well. So if I could begin, Dr. Dale, could you share kind of a moment in your career that reaffirmed your commitment to studying climate or sustainability development or environmental policy, and what helps make you stay hopeful about your ability to manage, I'll say, the climate crisis? I know that maybe it should be more climate change. I want to hear your perspective on this, and ultimately avoid the worst predicted impacts.
Great. Thank you, Alfred, and welcome everybody, and glad to hear you're interested in our program. Excuse me. Hope we can help answer questions today and give you a feel for what to expect and whether or not to apply, if that's what you're trying to figure out. My background is in political science, and so most of my really formative moments, I think, happened sort of in two spaces. One is in the policy space, and I had the opportunity to have a couple of close brushes with politics at a formative age. And those experiences where I went to Washington, D.C. and had a chance to visit the White House, I had a friend who was working there after college. Those experiences sort of planted some seeds in my mind about how to affect change, no matter what the issue is, right? How to think about who runs things in this country, how those government structures, institutions are organized, and what they do and don't do. And at the same time as I was having this sort of exposure to politics and political science, because it's not what I had studied as an undergraduate, I was at that point living out west in Colorado and spending 365 days a year outdoors in the mountains. I was a ski instructor and a backcountry guide, and I was completely in love with the mountains and the outdoors and the forests. And I had really discovered this. I'm a born and raised New Yorker, so this was kind of a revelation I was having after college. And I think what happened to me was this sort of mashup in my brain of this curiosity and interest in politics and in the policy process, combined with my growing sort of visceral love for the outdoors and being really attentive to threats that my favorite landscapes were facing at the time. We talked a lot about deforestation at that time in the American West. And so those two experiences sort of happening at the same time led me to go back to graduate school for a PhD in environmental policy. And that's what I studied. I got my degree in political science. And as to the second part of your question, Alfred knows this because he started laughing in the middle of the question. I will never talk about climate change as a crisis. I don't like the language. I think the problem of calling climate change a crisis is that I don't see a finish line. I think this is a really long-term transformational set of changes that society and civilization is going to undertake. And I don't have the ability to remain in crisis mode for that entire time. And I don't think we have a real way to understand this as a crisis that's productive. I prefer to turn down the temperature, as it were. And so I talk about climate change as transformational, as challenging, as also a set of opportunities that we face in a society that is not the way we want it to be. It's not like climate change has come along and threatened our otherwise perfect world. It's that climate change has come along and magnified problems that already exist. And so we have our hands full with natural resource challenges, environmental challenges, political challenges, social challenges, development challenges, and climate change we call a risk multiplier. So it intensifies a lot of the patterns that we're seeing, but I think it also creates some opportunities for progress.
That's great.
Maybe I'll stop there for now. Yeah.
I love it. No, that was phenomenal. And another question, and I do want to open up to Q&A and give plenty of time for our prospective students to ask questions. And now is the time to ask questions. What's one characteristic or opportunity Columbia Climate, or forgive me, now I wrote this down, now I'm struggling with it. But what is one opportunity at Columbia Climate School that you would highlight as an example of what makes this experience special, do you think?
Our climate school, I think, is really unique. And part of what I have really been appreciating about it, I would say maybe lately, even as we're growing so fast each year, we have more students. As Alfred said, we're a pretty new school. We remain pretty small, and nobody is anonymous and nobody is unknown. And even though some of our core courses are quite large, we know who's who, and we've really created, I think, a real community across, as you know, dozens of countries. 40+% of our students are international. They have their first language is not English. And so we have this incredible depth of diversity and backgrounds and experiences and life experiences that come to our classrooms. And our core courses are designed to provide opportunities for students to not only learn from us, the faculty, but from each other. And the students we've been able to admit into this program all show up with something of value to contribute and to share. And I really get a kick out of watching students learn from each other at the same time as they're sort of taking in all of this really technical content and learning in their core classes and in their electives. I think the community that we have built is really one of my favorite parts of the program.
Excellent, excellent, Dr. Jans. Now just gonna stop sharing my screen so I can take a look at the actual Q&A and see if there's anything that's really interesting. Okay, so one question from Anonymous. Oh, Anonymous, the infamous Anonymous. How does this program prepare students for leadership roles in climate governance and multilateral negotiation? Are there courses, capstone projects, internships, or other opportunities that focus on climate governance and research initiatives?
Yes, yes, and yes. This is my field in particular, so you got lucky. I'm the right person to answer this question. Um, we have a number of lawyers, political scientists, and people with sort of related backgrounds who really work in the space I think you're describing. I'm just back from Baku from COP29. We send a contingent every year, including some of our students who have been in past years. And we bring COP to New York in all kinds of ways. This year we did a really robust set of workshops before COP. And then a contingent of us traveled to the COP. This is the annual UN climate conference. Sorry to be acronyming you. And then when we got back, we had a post-COP workshop and debrief event. And so that was really fascinating. And we had a chance to hear from not just me, obviously, I was there, but a number of other experts, including faculty at the climate school, but also students. And we have a couple of students who have historically and some currently work on for their country's delegation, have been to past COPs, work as part of the youth COP. So we have a lot of different sort of inputs into the COP process. We also have, I think, at the climate school, deep expertise into the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is part of the global governance of climate change. We have a number of scientists, especially at the Lamont campus that Alfred talked about earlier, who have been long-term scientists and authors of the IPCC's recurring working group reports. So we have really deep expertise here at Columbia in that dimension as well. In my class, in the adaptation class, we spend, I would say, maybe 20% of our time on a deep dive on global institutional structures. We talk about the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. We talk about the Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement, the Sendai Framework, the SDGs, sorry, the Sustainable Development Goals. I just keep acronyming you. And we spend a lot of time thinking about how sovereign states participate in these intergovernmental fora, what can be accomplished and what can't be accomplished in those kinds of settings, how the global treaty process works. Is it working? Is it not working? And we spend a lot of time really digging into the institutional elements of climate change governance. That's absolutely my area of expertise and interest. So I think there's quite a bit in that area. Also, I think we have a number of capstone projects that come up related to this area that give students who are interested in this, like you are, an opportunity to work on an actual project with an actual client in that space. So we have attention to these issues in the core sequence. We have attention to these issues in the electives in various different ways. And we sort of go deep on it in capstones, where I think a number of our capstone projects, and students have some ability to sort of prioritize or indicate preference on which capstone they're interested in, that get you into that space. And I think to sort of prove the point, we've had several students, Alfred probably has a better sense of the numbers, who've gone on into careers in that field, in that area.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa. This might be building upon this last most recent question. And funny out, they called out one of the acronyms that you mentioned
Ah,
for someone pursuing, but this is like a nuanced question about MA versus MS. And I think
ah.
this is an internal gut check for obviously the student in the end, but maybe Lisa, if you have some insights that you'd want to share, or
Sure.
maybe some thoughts. So for someone pursuing a career in climate and environmental policy with a focus on working with
Mm.
governments, national level policy making bodies, and acting as negotiators for frameworks like the UNFCCC and with the Rio Conventions, would you recommend the MA in Climate and Society or the MS in Climate? Would you have thoughts on that, Lisa? Like which one you
What a
think?
great question. I mean, as a starting point, I think either degree is a pathway to get you toward that kind of professional experience. Depending on how you envision yourself contributing to those processes, I think is where the answer comes in. So I think of the MS, the 2-year program, as more natural science heavy. It's more quantitative, it's more scientifically intense in that way. So if your vision of being engaged in those global negotiations is to be the scientist, to be able to explain scientific processes and to understand and project climate impacts based on your expertise as a scientist, a physicist, or a climate modeler, for example, then that's a clear answer to do the MS. On the other hand, if your interest is more interdisciplinary, both programs are interdisciplinary, but the MA, I think, embraces social science in a more cohesive way, I guess. And if you're interested in being in those spaces as a policymaker, as a decision maker, as a strategist, as an analyst, those types of roles will certainly come into focus for you after the 1 year in the MA. And I think the MA is a really nice fit for that kind of targeted professional landing spot. But sort of to reiterate, I think either program can get you there. And every delegation who's participating in these sorts of negotiations has both natural scientists and social scientists in their delegation if they possibly can, because it really enriches their understanding.
That's such the truth, Dr. Dillon. We've been getting faced with those questions, so we're navigating that. But I think that's a great response. Another question that came in, and before we answer this question, one thing I want to anchor everybody joining the call today: the MA in Climate and Society is a professional degree. There is no thesis component within the MA in Climate and Society program. But that being said, we've certainly had students that have participated in different research projects or worked at different research centers. So with that, I would like to now allow Lisa, are there options to conduct research with professors in addition to research done for the MA curriculum, for example?
Yes, quite a number of opportunities for our students to participate in research with faculty. So this can happen through a variety of different channels. Most prominently, we offer in the program, I think twice per year, a set of, I'm going to take that back. Once per year, there's this official release of DRAs, which are departmental research assistants. And what that means is faculty who are working on funded research projects and need some help, need a student intern or a student research assistant, we submit on our end and say, here's my project, here's what I'm working on, here's what I need a student to help with. Those positions get posted and students can then apply. And there's many dozens of them. I mean, and so that's sort of the official format, but that maybe is misleading because that's by far not the only access point for getting involved in research. So many professors, myself included, for one reason or another, don't submit our project through the official channel at the right time. Either the project is out of sync in timing, the funding didn't come through, we didn't know we would need someone. There's all kinds of reasons why we miss the deadline or don't submit. And then we're looking for research assistants afterwards. So the climate school sends out a weekly newsletter called the Wednesday Weekly, and I am always completely gobsmacked by the number of opportunities available to our students each week. There's literally dozens of research positions and part-time jobs off campus and connections to faculty on campus and internships and assistantships, as well as teaching assistantships, which we can maybe talk about separately if someone's interested in that. But I think of the students, I would say, not all of them are interested in research positions, and those that really are, most of the time can make something happen. There's also lots of examples of students in our program working on research with faculty, not directly on the Morningside campus. So, for example, working with faculty at the Lamont campus is very common, and even some who work with faculty in other departments and other programs. Columbia is enormous, and we have a lot of cross-pollination across the other schools. So there's really bottomless opportunities to participate in research way beyond whatever was available to me as a graduate student. Our graduate students really, if that's something you care about and want to do, you can make that happen. You will find an opportunity.
It's phenomenal. Thank you so much, Lisa. Yes, and everything I can attest to it. I've witnessed it. Just the sheer number of students that get different research opportunities. Mailman School of Public Health has hired some of our
Yeah.
students. I mean, really, it's across the university. Another question that just came in, Marina. Thank you so much for joining again. What are the key practical skills that students develop through this program, and how do they prepare students for the workforce?
What a good question. Practical skills. Do we do
Yeah.
that in academia? Yes, we
Well,
do. We have we have practical skills, and I I think there's lots of different terms that we might put on what we mean by practical skills. So, for example, in my class, in the climate change adaptation class, it's a core class, so everybody's required to take that class. You learn a bunch of skills that I would call practical in terms of how to analyze government materials, how to understand policies, how to make sense of national strategies and national policy layers. But we also devote significant time in class to what I call the soft skills: presentation skills, writing skills, listening skills, um, all those sorts of communication skills. I think I always get a little bristled that we call them soft skills, because I think they're so critically essential that maybe we should call them something else. But that's on the social science side. I think you learn analytical skills and writing skills. On the natural science side, you're learning a whole lot of really technical skills. You'll learn how to use R, you'll get some exposure to Python. If you take classes in climate finance, you'll learn about how to do financial analysis and how to do some economic analysis and make sense of the financial dimensions of climate change and climate change activism and solutions. So I think really it's only limited by what pathway you choose. So you will be selecting electives that will, and what electives you choose and end up taking will really define what kind of skills you leave here with. And so it's going to be in a lot of ways up to you to decide what skills do you think you're going to need and want to pick up, and then finding electives that get you there. But through our core program, even if you only took the core, I think you would leave with both quantitative and qualitative skill base in the climate area.
Excellent. Yes. And just to briefly answer, are there any dual degree options with SEPA, the School of International Public Affairs? Unfortunately, we don't have a dual degree with SEPA, but, and I'm sure Lisa's going to be very excited to also see this question, but we do have a dual degree with the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. In fact, our website just recently got updated with additional details about it. And Damaris, sorry, if you wouldn't mind putting that into the chat box, the dual degree website. But that dual degree is not with the MA in Climate and Society, though. I need to be transparent about it. The dual degree is with the MS in Climate program and their Masters of Architecture and Urban Design. And that would be essentially a 5-semester sequence with 2 semesters completed at Columbia Climate School and 3 semesters completed at the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. And those do require 2 separate admissions applications, but Damaris will share with you the website that gives more detail about that. Excellent question. And then
I would also say we have a lot of students that take classes at SEPA. So we don't have a dual degree with SEPA, but We've had a surprising amount of success with our students getting into electives in SEPA. It's not a guarantee always when you're trying to cross-register. Sometimes it's harder than others. You'll learn as when you get here. It's a bit of an adventure. And honestly, I didn't quite know what to expect for SEPA. We have a lot of interest in those programs, but certainly their priority goes to their own students. I've been really pleasantly surprised how many of our students have been able to get into electives at SEPA and have really enjoyed them and talk about them fitting in really well with the rest of what they're learning at the climate school. So even though we don't have a dual degree, we're pretty well connected.
100%. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm.
Well, I don't see any more questions coming in. Maybe I'll just end on maybe one more question. Lisa, do you have any advice for prospective students that are thinking about Columbia Climate School?
Oh, well, we are really excited to welcome you here. I think my advice is a larger sort of how to think about graduate school in general type of piece of advice. Um, Graduate school is completely different from undergraduate. So especially for those of you who are recently graduated from your undergraduate experience and are approaching graduate school sort of with the same mindset, my advice is for you, which is to say, when you choose a graduate program, unlike undergrad, where you sort of take classes that you're interested in, you maybe have a major, but you're forced to take a variety of, at least if you went to a liberal arts school, you have to take a bunch of liberal arts classes. You may have a chance to discover interests that you have and plenty of room to explore those. Graduate school is much more career oriented. At the other end of your program is a job. And so I really encourage applicants to this program to at least have an idea of what awaits you at the finish line. What kind of job are you interested in? You don't have to know, you don't have to make a decision, but I would encourage you to spend time thinking about it that way. And for example, the student who asked the question, or the future student who asked the question, are we prepared to participate in climate negotiations? That student seems to have a pretty clear idea of at least the sort of arena in which they want to work. And so backing out of that, they think, okay, this is what I want to do. What kind of expertise and credentialing do I need to be able to participate in that space? And for that particular example, the climate and society degree is a really nice fit. But rather than, I think in undergrad, we do it the opposite way. We show up at school, we start taking classes, and then when you're a senior, you think, okay, now what can I do for a living? What skills and experience do I actually have that get me anywhere? Graduate school, you have to do it in the reverse order. You have to start with the job and work your way back. And I think that will help you submit a very competitive application because you'll be more focused and sort of clear-eyed on what you hope to get out of this program. And really importantly, it will help you have a better experience. You'll learn more, you'll have a better idea about what kind of electives interest you, and you'll be able to be much more focused in this program when you have some idea of where you want to go. You know, asterisk, you can always change your mind. So it's not like I want you to decide on the job now and stick with it. But I think thinking about it that way can be a really helpful way to approach whatever decisions you're trying to make.
Brilliant, Lisa. Thank you for that. And then this is just a kind of just a very last minute question that came in, which we appreciate, is what does a typical week for the MA Climate and Society student look like, specifically on campus class timings? Is it mandatory to be live on campus for full-time students through the program? Yes, absolutely. I think actually Lisa wants to give a little insight, but yeah, this is a program. When I was talking, you got a little bit of flavor when we talked about the part-time learning student community. This truly is an on-campus, in-residence program. If something happens in a student's life where they can't attend, of course, there's circumstances for that, but this is truly an on-campus program. Many of the course discussions for certain courses have Friday class meetings, for example. I know, and that's been an evolution, but I know a lot of students are like, oh, well, graduate school, you don't usually have Friday courses. In our program, we do. You know, Columbia University, in fact, is very competitive with classroom space. So Fridays become a key day. But Lisa, do you have any insights on that? I know it's pretty black and white, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I would just reiterate, this is an in-person full-time program and you should apply with eyes wide open. And so,
Yes.
you know, don't come here thinking, oh, I only have to be on campus a couple of days. The rest of it I can do from home or I can take online. And no, we want you in the flesh. We want your whole self here. This semester, I don't think this will repeat next year, but this semester, my core course was taught at 8:30 a.m. on Monday. So welcome to the week. And then we had our discussion sections on Friday afternoon. So we bookended the week, which meant none of us got a 3-day weekend, but it was okay. It's short term and we're learning together. So I really encourage you to have that expectation when you're applying and when you attend that you will be here Monday through Friday full time with us. And you'll have some gaps in your day and maybe a day off in the middle, but plenty of work to keep you busy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Lisa Dale. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective. Any questions, further questions that came in about commuting time or anything, I have one-on-one appointment calendar, so feel free to schedule that. I'm sure Damaris is going to highlight that appointment calendar, and then our main inbox can also serve from that perspective. But I just want to say thank you, Dr. Dale, and thank you to all the prospective students joining the session. Please, please, please feel free to reach out to us. The conversation does not end here. It's a continuation. I always want to emphasize that. And we look forward to connecting with all of you. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of the month and year. All right, take care. Bye-bye.